My name is Cara. Always strong, always selfless, always there. But whenever no one wanted to see me, or when their eyes didn't look into mine to read anything beyond the surface, I felt like nothing mattered anymore. Every moment I spent with my family was filled with the pain of being a figure constantly overlooked. No matter what sacrifices I made, no matter how hard I worked, I could never be enough. Maybe I'd gotten used to it. 'Cause Derek was always the shining star. Always the apple of the family's eye. And I was always the shadow cast by his light. Those thoughts grew even stronger when I heard Derek was engaged. Brooke, a beautiful woman, was lucky enough to take him from me, or so it felt. That thought alone was enough to break something inside me. My family revolved around Derek like a sun, while I remained eternally tethered to it as a shadow. Despite how much I loved them, I could never feel valuable enough. One day, at a family dinner Derek and Brooke had organized to plan their wedding, everything became clear to me. They talked about how hardworking I was, how I was always there making sure everything went smoothly. But as I reflected on how selfless I'd been, what did I hear next? Derek and Brooke said, "We're thinking of keeping the wedding small. Just the closest family." My eyes widened, my mouth went dry. Was I there? Was I the only one missing? I tried to recall the old bonds in our family, those days when we were once so close. But in that moment, something snapped inside me. Instead of seeing myself in my parents' eyes as the one organizing the wedding, I was left waiting for Derek and Brooke's happiness to take center stage. That night, I felt something within me that didn't belong. For some reason I couldn't name, everything was different now. That evening, alongside my love for them, my resentment grew. I'd always been the one meeting everyone's needs, always the one overlooked, always the one stepping aside for others. How estranged I'd become. I searched for meaning in every word spoken at that dinner. I'd ignored so much that, with every sentence, every glance, I realized I'd been constantly in the background, serving someone else's needs. No one asked what I wanted. No one understood me. All I'd ever waited for was their appreciation. But every time they praised Derek, every time they said something valuable about him, that's when my hope faded a little more. As my eyes watched Derek and Brooke's engagement ring being celebrated with shining joy, the disappointment I felt for their happiness cut deep. My mother's eyes on this joyful evening weren't looking at me, they were fixed solely on Derek. Still, I stayed silent. 'Cause I was always the one who stayed quiet, always the one scolded, always the one who gave up. This time, too, I didn't say a word. A voice inside me whispered, "Don't say anything, don't upset them." But every time I mustered the courage to do something different, I'd end up expressing my love and support for them by staying silent. Pain inside me revealed itself through the tears welling in my eyes. That table, gathered to celebrate Derek and Brooke's happy news, I wasn't there. No one asked me, no one wondered what I thought. Slowly, as I returned home with the growing anger and disappointment inside me, something began to shift. I didn't realize it then, but it was time to redefine myself. I arrived home and everything was in its place. Yet the emptiness within me had grown larger than ever, despite the outward order. The golden lights glowing in my room reminded me of something. There was something more than me. There was something I needed to find, my identity, my self-worth. And this realization made me see that no matter how selfless I was, my place in my family would always be in the background. I hadn't seen it before, hadn't felt it, but now I was beginning to understand. My phone rang. Derek's name appeared on the screen. "Think about me, Cara. We want you to be with us." In that moment, everything came crashing down. I realized how painful it was to be left out once again. Cast aside, left alone. What would I do now? The more I thought about that night, the larger the void inside me grew with every passing minute. Derek's name on my phone screen glowed like a light before my eyes. As I read his message, I felt the harshness of his words cut even deeper. "We'd really love for you to be with us, but it's going to be a small family wedding. We know you'll understand. Thanks again for everything." I read it over and over, the same sentence. Each word tore open a wound inside me, and with every reading, it deepened. What had I expected? That if they were happy, I'd be happy too? I felt like a fool. Once upon a time, Derek and I grew up together. As kids, we shared everything, leaned on each other, fought through every hardship side by side. The time I spent with him was a bond I'd never had with anyone else in my life. But now, staring at this message, I realized it had all been a lie. How strong had my ties with my family once been? Why had I suddenly been relegated to these family boundaries that meant nothing to me? There was a time when my mom and dad promised they'd always support me. But in recent years, all they'd done was applaud Derek and his dreams. As a child, they'd constantly told me, "Be a good girl." A girl who kept everything in order, never spoke up, always worked to please others. But so much time had passed. I'd come to realize that being that good girl wasn't enough to earn even a shred more recognition. Whenever I'd wanted something for myself, my voice had been silenced. No one had truly listened to me. That day, after that dinner, the resentment inside me swelled. What words should I use? What should I express? Every time I gathered my courage, I saw the same dissatisfied look on my mom's or dad's face. I had to change this situation. But how? No one understood me. I was just a background figure. Their joy, their success, everything revolved around Derek and Brooke. Yet there was a time when I'd been their favorite too. I couldn't remember when, where, or how I'd faded away. But now, on that evening when everyone else was happy, I was the only one who'd vanished, lost. When I got home, the gloom inside me was even heavier. As always, in that house where I'd kept everything in order and helped everyone, there was still something missing. The air inside felt like a void that didn't belong to me. I walked slowly. Every room, every piece of furniture felt foreign. Yes, I was here, but I didn't feel like I belonged. Everything was tidied up, everything was in its place, but this time something wasn't. The emptiness inside me wouldn't close, no matter how hard I tried. As the wedding preparations progressed, I drifted further away. I stopped joining in on Derek and Brooke's discussions about their plans. Every new development deepened the disappointment within me. What about those days when we used to laugh together? What about those old times? Now everything was gone. The spark in my eyes had given way to a faint despair. One day, Derek sent me a message on social media. "Everything's set for the wedding. We'd love for you to be there, but you know, there isn't room for every family member." That sentence triggered yet another fracture inside me. Every family member. Did that not include me? Wasn't I part of this family too? But they only saw me as someone standing on the sidelines. Instead of putting me at the center even once, I was always left waiting. All these years, everything had revolved around Derek. In that moment, I thought about the past and the future together. When had it all started? When had I become this figure always in the background, only meeting others' needs? My mom and dad had never told me I was the most important. They'd never said, "We prioritize you." I was always on the sidelines. With this realization, I decided there had to be something that belonged to me. Why had I spent so long trying to make others happy? How healthy was it to keep pushing my own happiness aside? One night, I began to rediscover myself. I started to see my own desires, needs, and emotions. After years of living solely to serve others, it was time to do something for myself. This time, instead of pleasing others, I needed to ensure my own satisfaction. I'd given so much for that wedding. But in the end, I felt like nothing more than a lost shadow. There was a void inside me. All this effort to always be the good girl, the good sister, the good daughter, what had it gained me? Now I knew I had to do something to close that void. As I slowly left another night behind, I stepped into a dark room filled with the effort to rediscover myself. Everything felt like a game, and I was beginning to confront a truth that affected me slowly but profoundly. My absence from Derek and Brooke's wedding plans wasn't just physical, it was turning into an emotional distancing as well. No matter how far I withdrew, with every step I remained invisible in my family's eyes. Every piece of me that had been lost was hidden behind yet another sacrifice. Once my place in this family had felt so secure, but now I felt like a stranger. One morning, as I read a message from my mom, the collapse inside me deepened. Everything's set for the wedding. Everyone's ready and you should join too. It was written so harshly, so coldly, as if she were saying, "This was your duty." This was my mother, the one who'd seen me for years as the selfless girl who makes sure everything goes smoothly, who's always there. But one day I wanted to push back and show myself. With what courage, though? My eyes blurred as I reread the message. I went over the same sentence multiple times. Each time I felt those sparkling emotions slowly fade. Did I really want to join them? Or was I just trying to fill the void they'd left by making myself visible in their eyes again? For a moment, I realized everything had turned into despair. All the support I'd given them, even the smallest hint of appreciation, it had all vanished. I walked slowly to the kitchen. I remembered that old table, the one where my family and I used to laugh and enjoy each other's company. Now, everyone was preoccupied with something else. Those times when we weren't truly together, just standing side by side. That table once symbolized a place where we came together and shared our stories. But lately, no one at that table listened to each other. Even when we gathered as a family, no one really understood anyone. One morning, as I sipped my coffee, I took a deep breath and began revisiting the past once more. When had I started this? When had I begun serving only others, putting their needs before my own? My mom, my dad, Derek, I'd wanted to be there for all of them, always helping. But now, something inside me was starting to break. I saw myself as someone who'd accepted that the only important thing in my life for years was their happiness. Yet a voice inside me said this was wrong. 'Cause no one wanted to see me, I'd become a figure lost in their emotional wreckage. That evening, I was alone at home. I thought about Derek and Brooke's wedding plans. When I'd heard they were engaged, there'd been a void inside me. But now, that void was growing even larger. Not joining in on the wedding preparations, not being part of their noise, gave me a feeling. I'd started to feel more estranged than ever before. My home, my belongings, my room, everything felt like a distant stranger. I didn't recognize myself. Who was that old, strong, selfless Cara? Now, I was beginning to understand who I really was. One day, I came across an old photo album. There was a picture of Derek and me as kids taken by the lake. I remembered that moment, smiling and hugging each other. I thought about the promises we'd made back then. But now, looking at that photo, I realized nothing was the same anymore. Derek was no longer by my side. He was building a future with Brooke while I remained on the sidelines. My family still revolved around him. Tears in my eyes mirrored the brokenness inside me. The people I'd once laughed and had fun with no longer saw me. I remembered what my mom used to say, "If you work harder, you'll get more. Making others happy is your duty." But I'd never gotten anything in return. Whenever I wanted to do something for myself, they'd tell me, "That's not your job." Whenever I took a step and asked for something for myself, I saw a look of inadequacy in their eyes. In their view, I was still the figure who took care of everyone's responsibilities, who served others. I had no place of my own. A figure on the sidelines, someone they never truly valued. One night, as I tried to fall asleep, the void inside me grew even larger. A single tear rolled down my face, buried in my pillow. I hadn't found my own identity. I was still striving for their approval. But now it was time to know myself. I didn't want to be someone shaped solely by their expectations anymore. I wanted to carve my own path. In that moment, I realized that what I'd lost all these years was actually myself. In trying to make them happy, I'd forgotten my own happiness. I'd tried to fill that void by earning their approval. But now I knew I'd fill it not with others' validation, but from within myself. It was time to embark on a journey to rediscover myself, to uncover my own identity. Another week passed. As Derek and Brooke's wedding date drew closer with each day, I retreated further into myself. I began keeping the anger and disappointment I felt toward them locked inside. This time, I was determined to set aside my old loyalty to everyone else. What had my lifelong struggle to make others happy ever gained me? My family hadn't appreciated how selfless I'd been. In their eyes, I'd remained just a necessary figure. Someone cast aside, forgotten. One evening, as I sat alone at home, my phone rang. It was Derek. I read his message, and the unease inside me surged instantly. Cara, the wedding preparations are ensuring everything will be perfect. If you want to be with us, there's a place for you in the plans. The same old words, written in a way that made me feel worse, as if he didn't want me to blame him. Was it indifference? Or was it really me who wanted to celebrate him and Brooke? For 2 days, I turned that message over in my mind. I felt like nothing depended on me anymore. What about those old days? Things were so simple back then. Whenever I missed those moments when we were all together, I thought about how all the struggles and sacrifices I'd made for my family had vanished irretrievably. My mom had said for years, "Everything's in your hands, Cara. You're a good person, you know your responsibilities. You're the pillar of our family." But something was missing. I'd served them for years, but in the end, I was always left alone. The love and attention that should have been mine had all disappeared. One evening, I received a message about the final details Derek and Brooke had planned for the wedding. This time, I felt so much that I stared at my phone screen for a long while. "We hope you'll join us for the wedding, Cara. You really mean a lot to us. We want to be together, but your participation is essential to make everything go smoothly in this process. We want it all to be perfect." Every word in that sentence touched a wound. We want it all to be perfect. For once, I didn't have to be perfect. I'd been forced to be that for years, but no one had understood how much it had worn me down. For a moment, I wondered why I was still expecting something from them. Why was I still making every sacrifice to be accepted by them? Something was awakening inside me. This selflessness would never come back to me. Nothing would change for me. I'd always remain in the background, just a figure meeting others' needs. And accepting that meant taking a deep breath and watching something reshape itself in my soul. My confidence, the strength I'd once had, was fading a little more each day. But at last, I realized I needed to rediscover that lost identity. The me who'd stood on the sidelines, worn away by efforts to make others happy, was gone. I needed a new beginning. I'd come to see that everything I'd done for years had somehow taken from me and given to others. Now it was time to stop casting myself aside. For once, I'd listen only to myself. One morning, I was alone at home. Derek's messages, Brooke's smile, they were all just memories now, left in the past. Every time she smiled, I wasn't there. Looking back, I'd once been part of those moments. But then I'd always been pushed to the background. I'd been cast aside. I'd set my own happiness aside and done everything to make them happy. That day, I opened my phone. The wedding preparations were still ongoing. There were a few more details left. The bitterness inside me was slowly starting to scab over. I'd reached the end of it all. My family had made me feel discarded. But there was a feeling inside me I had to change something. Waiting, constantly pleasing others, always seeking approval, these no longer defined me. I had to take a step. I reviewed the budget we'd set for the wedding preparations. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't sacrifice myself again for their happiness. One day, I decided not to attend Derek and Brooke's wedding. I'd always been the one sacrificing myself for their dreams. But now I realized this had to end. This time, I'd listen only to myself. I needed to find the courage to take a step, to make a new beginning. Because what I'd needed all these years wasn't to please others, it was to find myself. I wouldn't fight anymore for people who pushed me aside, who didn't value me. When would this truly end? My journey to find my identity was about stepping out of being a sidelined figure and discovering who I really was. This was the most right decision I'd ever made in my life. As the wedding day drew closer, I continued to keep my distance from them. Derek and Brooke kept sending me invitations at every opportunity while preparing for the wedding, but I said no each time. I no longer wanted to be part of it. For them, who wanted everything to be perfect, I'd remain a figure standing on the sidelines. Accepting that no longer left a void inside me. 'Cause beyond everything, I now wanted my own happiness. One morning, my mom called me. Her voice was soft, as always. "Cara, when are you coming? You still need to get ready for the wedding. There's only one day left. We know how important this is to you. Please be with us," she said. In that moment, hearing her voice on the phone, I felt something shake inside me. It was so clear that controlling all the emotions in my heart as I responded was nearly impossible. "Mom," I said, "I'm not coming. I feel better here." The silence stretched on. I thought about all the things my mom wanted to say but couldn't, as she always did. But now it was time to say something. My family might see how much I loved them, but they didn't understand that what I needed was simply understanding. That day, I wandered through the house. I realized how empty everything keeping me here felt. Every object, every item seemed like it didn't belong to me. While Derek and Brooke continued preparing to celebrate their happy day, I was searching for something to fill the void inside me. No matter how much I sacrificed, I had to accept that at some point it all became meaningless. For years, I'd lived prioritizing others' happiness over my own. But somehow, I'd come to realize it was time to change that. I picked up my phone. I read one of the messages Derek had sent me. "We're all waiting for you. This means so much to us." The words no longer felt like they carried the meaning they once did. As my fingers hovered over the screen, a feeling washed over me like no one who valued me was out there. The wedding would be Derek and Brooke's happiest moment, but I was too lost to be part of it. Wanting everything to be perfect for them while feeling like a mere shadow. What a contradiction. The more I felt the anger and disappointment within me, the faster my search for my own identity grew. For years, I'd lived only to serve others, meeting their needs. But now I realized I didn't have to live that life anymore. I had needs too. I had emotions too. But no one had understood them. My mom and dad cheered Derek's every success, while my achievements, my promotions, everything I'd earned in life were pushed aside. I'd always had to take a step back. Always being selfless, the good girl just serving others. But those roles no longer belonged to me. That day, as I sat down for dinner, the silence in the house enveloped me. My family spending time together as usual only made me feel more alone. While they were together, I was always outside in the shadows. My mom served the food, my dad watched TV, and Derek and Brooke exchanged winks. Everything was normal, everything was as I'd grown used to. But I sat there like a stranger. that table, in that room, it was as if I wasn't even there. A silent scream that had been building inside me for years rose up. No one heard it. For a moment, I felt a vast emptiness within me. As someone who'd lost her identity, living for years to serve others, I realized how alone I was. I'd always wanted to be the good girl, but in the end, I'd lost myself. My mom had always said, "You deserve the best, Cara." But that best wasn't for me. That best had come at the cost of serving others. And as I kept paying that price, I'd slowly lost my identity. That night, before falling asleep, I lay in bed thinking for a long time. I'd always focused on others, always tried to improve their lives. But in the end, I needed to realize I had a life too. I had to end my dependence on them, all the effort I'd put into pleasing them. It was time to embark on a journey to find myself. For years, I'd focused on others, but now I had to set out on my own inner journey. The wedding was Derek and Brooke's happy moment, but sharing that happiness no longer held meaning for me. This time, I had to carve my own path. I had to stop putting others' happiness before my own. What I hadn't done for years, I finally had to do: love and accept myself. See my own worth. I spent that night wrestling with a kind of indecision within me. I'd always felt like I existed to help others, to ensure their happiness. But now I no longer wanted to keep up the sacrifices expected of me. It was time to carve my own path. There was a void inside me, but I knew now that I had to look outward to fill it. The emotions I'd suppressed for years were trying to show me how to live my life, what kind of person I could be. Yet, the disappointment I saw in my mom's, dad's, and Derek's eyes kept eroding my courage. That morning, I looked in the mirror. Slowly, I fixed my gaze on myself and thought, was this the Cara who'd been lost years ago? The girl who'd always run toward being the good girl, constantly trying to please others? That girl had now given way to someone else. That someone had to be me. The person who'd forgotten who she was, what she wanted. That person had to come back. Before, I'd always sensed a kind of dissatisfaction in my mom's and dad's eyes. No matter how hard I worked, they always praised others, always applauded Derek's successes. My achievements, my promotions, all the efforts I'd made over the years were overlooked. I was never enough. But now I realized this had to end. This selflessness, this constant effort to please others, had destroyed me after a certain point. I'd forgotten my own identity, my own worth. That day, I decided I wouldn't attend Derek's wedding. In that special day when everyone would be happy, I wouldn't be just a figure standing on the sidelines trying to do something. For years, I'd fought to please them, but I'd never had the chance to tell anyone about myself. Now, this journey was about rediscovering myself, rekindling the strength within me. I had my own needs, emotional, physical, spiritual. Understanding those needs, respecting them, and taking a step to redefine who I was became my mission. One morning, I went for a walk. The streets were quiet. Listening to the sounds of nature, feeling the breeze caress my face, brought me a bit of peace. I walked slowly. My eyes wanted to explore everything around me. With every step, every breath, I felt closer to myself. I thought about which direction I wanted to go, which steps I needed to take. I no longer had to serve anyone or anything. I just had to listen to myself, find myself. That lost, abandoned girl inside me was slowly starting to return. Slowly, but with steady steps. There was no point in filling the void within me by meeting others' expectations. They were happy while I always remained incomplete. But now I wouldn't live to make anyone else happy. I had to find my own happiness within. Reaching my own goals, building my own life, that would be my greatest reward. As the days passed, the strength inside me grew. My mom's and dad's words no longer affected me. Derek and Brooke would build their own lives. It was time for me to build mine too. Looking out at the world, my eyes now sought to find myself. I'd served others for years, but now I felt I had to carve my own path. When the wedding day arrived, I was alone at home. My phone rang. It was Derek. His message read, "We'd have loved to have you with us, but we know you've made your own decision. Still, we wish you all the best." In that moment, I felt nothing. They'd be happy and I'd keep walking my own path. Everyone's life was different, everyone's choices were different. For me, the most important thing now was moving forward with my own choices on my own path. In the room where I spent that night, I thought for a moment about how much everything had changed. The old Cara was gone. Now, there was a woman ready to take steps for her own life. I didn't have to prove anything to anyone. I had to find my worth within myself. Watching Derek and Brooke's wedding might have been important to them, but it no longer mattered to me. This wasn't the end of my journey to find myself, it was just the beginning. Once I'd had to serve their expectations. But now I was accepting this feeling and shaping my life not according to them, but according to my own truths. My path wasn't about serving others, it was about discovering myself. With every step, I felt that discovery deepening. No longer was it just them who deserved the best. I had to give myself the best life too. And now, everything was ready for me to set out on that journey. It was the wedding day. Everyone was happy, everyone was continuing with the preparations, but this time I didn't stay on the sidelines. Casting myself aside had been my greatest burden for years. But now I no longer had the strength to carry that weight. There was no point in filling the void I felt inside me with other people's happiness. That evening, I chose to spend some time alone. I ignored the constant messages and calls coming to my phone. No one would tell me what to do, and I wouldn't have to explain myself to anyone. Everything was quiet. But this silence, unlike before, wasn't unsettling, it was soothing. As I began to know myself, the world seemed to calm down a little. I took a slow breath and thought about what I truly needed to focus on in my life. I reflected on how complicated everything had been. 4 years I'd lived for others according to their truths. Yet I had a life of my own. Now, discovering that life was the most important thing to me. That day, I made another decision. I wanted to give myself the chance I'd denied myself for years. Setting my past aside, I had to make a choice to truly carve my own path. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath for a few seconds. What did I need to do? Building my own future, making my own choices, these were vital to me. But I had to be more careful than I'd ever considered before. 'Cause every choice I made needed to avoid leaving a void inside me. This was a way to not only accept myself but also those around me in a healthier way. As the indecision within me gradually faded, a single thought emerged in my mind: I will know myself. Until now, I'd been involved in everyone else's lives, trying to live the way they wanted. But now I was determined to explore myself and my life more deeply. I took my first step and decided to go out. Alone, unbound to anyone, I'd spend time according to my own desires. Spending the night alone wasn't something I was used to at first. My mind was spinning so fast that instead of focusing on the emotions swirling inside me, I wanted to step outside and be by myself. I got dressed slowly and went for a walk. The streets were empty, the air cool. The moonlight illuminated everything around me. A voice inside me said, "Whenever you want, you're free in that moment." And that voice told me something inside me was breaking, opening me up to new possibilities. I stepped into a coffee shop. As I entered, the warm scent of coffee enveloped me. There were only a few people inside. Everyone was in their own world, passing the time quietly. I sat at a table and looked out the window. Watching life rush by gave me a kind of comfort. I should have done this long ago, I thought. Taking time for myself, listening to my inner voice, I began sipping my coffee slowly. My mind was still full of questions. How will I do this? Am I really ready to be alone, to live just for myself? But on the other hand, this solitude didn't scare me. Loneliness could take me somewhere. I'd started finding my own path. This journey, however long and difficult, was mine. With every step, every transition, I'd grow stronger. On this journey to find myself, I didn't want to remain in the shadow of others' expectations. For so many years, I'd lived according to their truths, their desires. Now, I had to do something to find my own way. This wasn't just a decision about myself, it was also a chance to make a real change in my life. I had to love myself, value myself, and do something to help myself most of all, not just others. That evening, I stopped interfering in other people's lives. I didn't go watch their wedding, but it no longer felt like a burden. Things that once mattered so much to me now held no meaning. What was real for me now was my own path. On this path, I'd grow stronger with every step. The next day, I decided to go somewhere I'd wanted to visit for a long time. Just me, myself, and a long walk. Slowly, step by step, I was filling the void inside me more and more. This journey was about my inner discoveries, about finding my own identity. Discovering what I truly loved, what I wanted. This exploration would be my most valuable journey. A week had passed. For that week, I thought about what had changed in my life. Derek and Brooke's wedding had already taken place, and they'd begun their own lives together. But I was no longer focused on them. I spent a lot of time walking my own path, finding myself and shedding the traces of the past. There was a sense of relief within me, but also a tinge of sadness. All those years I'd given to others' happiness had, in truth, gained me nothing. Now I was taking steps to love myself, find my own way, and build my own life. One morning my phone rang. I opened my eyes and checked the screen. It was my mom calling. I didn't know how to respond or what to say when I answered. Finally, I took a deep breath and picked up. "Hello, Mom," I said. My voice, for the first time, sounded calm, reflecting an acceptance of my decisions. "Cara, you didn't come to the wedding. I just want to talk about that. We wanted you to be with us. We didn't want you to hurt us. Do you understand me?" I noticed the worry in her voice, but at the same time, I felt something had shifted. In the past, words like these would have crushed me. But now they gave me strength instead. "Mom," I said, "I needed myself too. That wedding wasn't important to me. I had to start knowing myself. I wanted to make peace with who I am. Taking this step, doing what's right for my own life, I want you to understand that too." There was a moment of silence, but this silence wasn't filled with guilt. It was tinged with maturity. My mom took a deep breath. "I'm trying to understand, Cara. It's been hard for me to accept, but maybe you're right. Finding your own path is important. I realize we should have supported you more. We need to listen to you more now. This is your life, your journey." In that moment, something broke inside me. This might not have been what I'd sought for years, but now it mattered. My mom and I were understanding each other better. This change was perhaps the result of me taking the right steps for the first time. That night, sitting alone at home, the silence outside brought me peace. I now had a direction in my own life. The needs and expectations of everything and everyone no longer defined me. I'd learned to listen to my inner voice. I realized I didn't need to hold a significant place in Derek and Brooke's lives, that this journey was about making peace with myself and finding my own path. And that gave me a real sense of freedom. One morning, as I came into my room, I sat by the window and looked outside. Everything was clearer. I was beginning to understand my life, who I was, and what I wanted. Finding my own way, learning to live without needing others' approval, truly knowing myself, I'd achieved that. I'd rediscovered a part of me that had been lost in the past. I'd taken the most important step in my inner journey. I'd done it. As the days went by, the world around me changed. Old habits, old thoughts, they were giving way to new ones. I began building a life that was uniquely mine. Being alone, staying alone, had once been something I feared. But now, solitude empowered me. Being on my own wasn't the end of everything. It was, in fact, a beginning for me. One evening, I flipped through an old photo album. Pictures of Derek and me as kids, old family photos. A tear rolled down my cheek, but this time it wasn't pain. Pain wasn't accumulating inside me as it always had. This time it was a kind of relief. This tear didn't exhaust me. It was the release of emotions I'd suppressed for years. In that moment, I felt as if a burden had lifted. Something was changing. The air outside was cold, but inside me it felt like spring had arrived. Somewhere along the way, I realized I could find the peace I'd sought for years in solitude. I wasn't alone because I was now at peace with myself. I finished my coffee slowly and stood up. Each of my steps was another stride toward rediscovering myself. I thought about how complicated everything had been, but now I wanted to shape that complex life according to my own truths. Knowing myself no longer felt like being a stranger to myself. That old state of being the good girl was over. I deserved to be alone with myself, to listen to myself. My phone rang. First, I ignored it, but then I saw who the message was from. It was Derek. His message read, "We wanted to be together, but we understand you, Cara. Our lives are all different. Still, we love you." Those words stung a little, but they also told me something. They might still love me, but I no longer had to join them or interfere in their lives. I'd found my own path and wanted to live my own life. There was love in that message, but I also realized that love encompassed a space that didn't belong to me anymore. I no longer had a place in Derek and Brooke's world, and maybe I shouldn't. The void inside me was somehow filling. Being alone was no longer a lack. Even if others didn't recognize my worth, I was beginning to find it within myself. The approval I'd once chased so desperately was now far behind me. I wouldn't strive for it anymore. I'd live only for myself. For the first time in my life, I'd found the strength to stand behind my own decisions and choices. On Derek and Brooke's wedding day, while all the preparations concluded and happy moments unfolded, I wasn't standing on the sidelines, feeling obligated to celebrate them.